Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. Very happy to have you with us today. We're going to be talking a little bit about a program called Visiting VR. VR stands for virtual reality, and what we might learn from that for ourselves. And one of the things that I've thought about is that technology can be an isolating element in our society, but there are things, I think, to some degree, like this medium we do, that can actually make connections through technology. So it's not actually the tool, it's how we use it. And Stephen Jones, who's been working on this project in the last bit here, is going to tell us a little bit about what he's been doing in Santa Barbara. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for sponsoring Something to Talk About. They offer independent living, assisted living, and memory care. They're located up on Rolling Bay, and they will be glad to give you a tour. They can also tell you about their day stay and respite programs. And if you call Celia or Jamie and ask them, they'll be glad to treat you to lunch at their bar and grill so you can get a sense for the environment up there. 206-594-1010, or check out the website at fieldstonecommunities.com. I also would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water, members of the Salish Sea communities that have been living here since time immemorial. We honor them and we are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters. To get us going and introduce Stephen and start the questioning, my good friend and colleague Jim McPherson is here. So, Jim, thank you very much for stepping in today, and away you go.
Thank you, Reed. We really appreciate that introduction. I'm sure Stephen has a lot to tell us. And I've been thinking about this myself, and as the concept of virtual reality has been very interesting to me for a number of years. Uh, and I guess a way to start this would be for Stephen. Why don't you kind of introduce yourselves and give us a sense of your background and how you ended up in this interesting field.
Well, thanks, Jim. And I'm really grateful to be in this conversation. One of the first things I noticed was that we have a shared mission, which is to enhance the quality of life through more meaningful connections and to empower seniors with possibility. So I was eager to join this meeting. My background academically, I earned my doctorate in depth psychology, studying phenomenology, basically the human experience. And I learned that life is lived in the connections, the felt connections that we have in the world. And as a caregiver and a hospice administrator, I was shown over and over again that those connections don't become any less important as we age. They just become more difficult to maintain. And so working with all sorts of wonderful people, all unique, but universally all living in a world that seemed smaller than it used to. And I learned that when we're living with limited mobility or have limited access to the outdoors, that the world starts to change on us. And as you get to see there at your senior center, connections lead to relationships, relationships build community, and it's there that we can feel that sense of belonging that we yearn for. And when we're living with limited mobility or don't have access to the world, that can lead to disconnection and isolation and spiral into all sorts of negative health outcomes. I remember reading that health advisory that the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released last year, alerting us to this public crisis in the US of isolation and loneliness. And as a caregiver, always looking for ways to make those connections more meaningful. So I found this Pro Connection tool in VR technology. I found something that people could use who were homebound or isolated to be connected to that world that they miss. And I started using this technology with myself. I then started sharing it with my neighbors, the people on my block, through my neighborhood, and just found more and more people in my community who were open to engaging with this world in a new way. Luckily for us, this epidemic that the Surgeon General so rightly identified isn't one that we're waiting for a vaccine. This is one where the medicine is hiding in plain sight. The medicine is in the connections that we have with the world. And it's no longer just an individual's responsibility to maintain those connections. It's up to us as the community to see that people are feeling that sense of connection rather than feeling invisible or neglected.
Now, tell me something, Stephen. As far as this concept of virtual reality, I think many of our viewers are going to be somewhat interested in what that even means. And it's changed a lot over the last 10 years, you know, when we saw the huge headsets and this shaky stuff and people getting sick all the time
Yes.
trying to use it. Why don't you give us a sense of how it's progressed now to a point where you feel it's become a useful tool for people that might be listening to this podcast?
Thanks, James. I mean, it's true that most people think about video games. That was what I thought. I thought this was a toy. I thought it was for entertaining. I thought it was a distraction. I thought it would take me out of the world. When in fact I found applications that allowed me to do quite the opposite. So I use what are considered 360 videos. So rather than it being a digital virtual world, we're using virtual headsets in order to view real videos that were shot by real people at real locations. But since they're shot with a 360-degree camera, when you're viewing the video, it feels as if you're in the scene rather than outside observing it. And that's been our case our whole life. Whenever we're looking at a photograph or watching a movie or a television show, it's all taking place on a two-dimensional screen. With this technology, it allows us to leap into the scene and enjoy it all around us, just like we get to do in the real world. It's just as real to the left as it is to the right. And so it's that experience of immersion that's so exciting and novel to us, because we're so used to being a spectator to these kinds of experiences rather than feeling the presence of them. So I have hundreds of travel videos that allow us to go all over the world to famous landmarks or cities, beaches, waterfalls. We can go and watch the sunrise from the moon. Incredible content that I load onto headsets. And what I do is I go and visit with my neighbors, learning a little bit about who they are, what they love, where they've been, where they would still like to go, and create an itinerary. And we go together. I am able to share the videos with them. They're deployed in their headset. I'm following along on my computer. I put it up on the TV screen so caregivers or family members or friends can also see what the user is experiencing. And so when the user sees the lighthouse, we all see the lighthouse. We're there sharing that travel experience together. And so it becomes a social experience as well, as opposed to a private, disconnected one. This is something that we're doing together as a group.
Francis, can you? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Francis.
Yeah, Francis, good to have you here.
And so not only do we have experiences for travel, but a lot of nature connections, a lot of animal encounters, a lot of wonderful arts and culture. People are recording more performances. So Broadway in VR, the opera in VR, these incredible performances, rather than needing to be there in person to experience, we're able to create the content and share with people from the comfort of their own homes.
So tell me about the production of this sort of thing, because it seems to me that there must be some fairly technical camera work that's involved in getting the 360. And so if you're going to go see an opera, for example, you'd have to have some kind of a fairly fancy camera that can pick up if you turn to look, around the beautiful hall that you happen to be in, listening to watching this opera. I got to see my mom sing it at the Carnegie Hall, for example. So if you were able to look up, and I was way up in the balcony, if you could look down, I mean, how do you get that kind of technology into those locations? What's it like?
That's great. Thank you. And luckily, we're working with the people who are already looking to make these performances more accessible. So they already have the technological know-how. They want to make these performances more accessible. And this is a technology that allows them to do so. So they're able to position cameras right up at the front of the stage to give you the best seat in the house. So this is a technology that's just going to continue to advance to allow people to be more places than they can be physically, without feeling like they're missing out on the world.
So as far as what's probably more the meat and potatoes of what I think, and you'll tell us about, is to experience things that maybe the home country that they used to live in, or a place in the United States they haven't been in a while. What about the audio side of it? Is that you talking to them, or is there audio? Do they wear headphones, or how does that come through?
I appreciate all the clarifying opportunities to talk about this. So yes, so there's incredible audio with each of the experiences. Some of them are narrated tours, others come with music, others have just the natural sounds of the environment. If we're at a waterfall, just enjoying the sound of that waterfall. So it depends on the experience and knowing what kind of overall experience somebody's looking for. If they want to have a tour that has a lot of information, or whether they would rather tour a city just to a soundtrack of some music. So it also just depends on how somebody likes to travel, if they would like more information on where they are or less. The technology is becoming ever more customizable, which is something that I'm very excited about. Is not where it is, but just where it's going, and people becoming aware of the possibilities and how it's becoming more and more accessible. And that was something that I wanted for my neighbors, was knowing that here we have this front leading edge technology that was seemingly inaccessible to the fastest growing population. And so I've just been working, iterating it in my own way, with my own neighbors, learning from each person how to make it a little more accessible, to the point where if you can sit and enjoy television, if you have the visual capacity to enjoy television and the auditory capacity to enjoy television, then you can enjoy virtual reality. But it's true that it is a visually based medium with auditory support.
Now, as far as the visuals of it, I remember early on there were some people that said they got nauseous when they used VR. Tell me about that and how you fixed it. And obviously you're using this with older people that might have some sensitivities. And so how has that developed over time?
Thank you. Yeah, certainly the camera work has improved, the stabilization, the clarity. But what's also really important is just working our way up to it. So I always start somewhere where we're static, somewhere where we're just in a creek bed, and give person a chance to really adjust to being in 360 before we might move into a different location, or a video that has some movement, or maybe even some aerial lift. A lot of the videos come with these beautiful bird's eye view of areas and cities, views that we couldn't have even appreciated there in person. and just knowing where somebody's at in terms of their comfort. That's why being there in person as a guide is so important. Being a trained caregiver, knowing how to really read somebody, looking at the comfort of their hands, their face, listening to them very closely about what's working and making those adjustments so that if somebody wants to go higher and faster, we can do that. If people want to slow down and just stay right where they are, then we can do that as well. And if it ever becomes a little uncomfortable, people can just close their eyes. We can just close the curtains on their face and they just let us know. And I remove the headset. We talk about it and we talk about what was working and what wasn't and make those adjustments.
Could you show us that headset again and give us a sense of how heavy it's going to be on an older person's head?
Absolutely. So this is about a 2-pound headset. It goes on my head like this. I wear it like this. This is how goofy I look. But right now I'm in Antarctica. There's penguins, icebergs, a sunrise. I wish I could show you exactly what I can see in here, but it's a whole world. There are also headsets as small as this. This is a company called Mind Immersive. They're amazing. They've been working in this lane, working to bring this technology into senior living for over a decade now. This is their headset. It's much smaller. It's much lighter. They're more like goggles. And then from a tablet, I can just deploy all of the different experiences. So if we wanted to start in Pisa, I can just click the Pisa video and there we are in Italy. And if while we're in Italy, they're talking about their service as a veteran, and we start talking about how they've never seen the monuments in Washington, D.C. And so we can take them down to the monuments so that they can see these monuments that were built in their honor. We can play with puppies. We can swim with dolphins. We can go to the Great Wall of China or tour the pyramids. And what's so great is that it's there on my tablet as well. So it's a shared experience. It's something that we're doing together so that when somebody gets back, we can talk about how it was and we're in a conversation. And so it's about giving somebody a new experience so that we can have a new conversation. Reed.
So we have a question from Reed. Go ahead, Reed. Since I'm in charge, I'm going to ask him to ask a question here. Go ahead, Reed.
I will. Thank you. So, Stephen, one of the things that we talked about when we were getting ready for this program was the idea that here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, we're looking at an expanded center in several years. We're trying to start to raise money for that. And I was thinking about the idea that multimedia experiences, especially partnered multimedia experiences like you're talking about, are the kind of thing that we might want to explore as an open door that we might be able to open with a little more experience. What do you think about the potential for this as an activity that might be possible for senior centers to embrace?
Reed, this is where I would love to see it going. As it becomes easier, as it becomes more accessible, I would like my role to disappear. I would not want anyone to feel like they would need a VR guide. I would like this to be something that we can just sit down and easily do with and for one another. It's an amazing opportunity to jumpstart a conversation, to first take a hot air balloon ride over the Grand Canyon together, then talk about growing up in Colorado together. It's just a wonderful way of meeting somebody in a space that we couldn't get to in person. Maybe they're limited mobility or they just have limited access to these kinds of experiences. And so to have a friend who can come over. Actually, I shared with Reed, during the pandemic, when we were all isolated, it was a friend of mine who shipped me a headset so that we could continue our ping pong playing together. This is a pro connection tool for friends. This is a way for reaching out to somebody who's laid up either temporarily from a surgery and just can't enjoy their daily walks, and to be able to sit not just together in the recovery room or in their living room, but to be able to sit together in a forest while the snow was falling. To be able to offer those kinds of experiences to and for one another, I think is going to be uh, a renaissance for senior living. I think that's what Dr. Vivek Murphy was saying about the medicine being in plain sight, that it's the connections that we can offer one another that's going to help us through so much of what could be a lonelier time.
No, I don't think you want to imply that, I'll get to you, Francis. Let me ask this question, it'll be next. You're not implying that people will be able to see each other. I mean, they're going to be watching the same thing and then they'll be able to talk about it. I mean, you can't turn your head and see your neighbor next to you unless you have the other kind of virtual reality classes where you can see, I forget what that's called.
It's
But
true.
it's a
Thank you.
shared experience. It's like going to the movies together and then you can talk about it later, right?
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead, Francis. If you can, I'll unmute you here, or go ahead and unmute yourself there, Francis. It says I can't. There you go. Go ahead.
I was late joining, and thanks to Reed for getting me online. So it may have been discussed, but for me, the elephant in the room is price. Accessibility, first of all, includes being able to afford it. And then the second issue for me in terms of accessibility is closed captions. If there's a dialogue, or I should say monologue, describing what you're saying or anything, if it's not closed captions, it would be very difficult for me. But first of all, being able to afford it.
Afford it. Absolutely. No, Francis, and thank you for breaking accessibility down to different aspects. And you're absolutely right that accessibility includes the cost of something. And that's something that I'm working on, because I don't ever want the cost to be something that the user's responsible for. So we're getting very creative about how we can make these kinds of opportunities available for everybody. And the affordability is an issue. Luckily, all of this is coming down in price. As the technology evolves, it's becoming more and more affordable. Right now, I know that to get into like a headset like this with Mind Immersive, it's about $100 a month. And for that subscription, you have a headset for the community, you have the tablet, and you have hundreds of experiences that you're able to share with yourselves and with each other. And that's where we are now. And I would like to think that that's only going to get better, that we're going to find better partners in the community to help offset these costs. We already know the costs of not addressing the need for connection and community. We know the cost in healthcare dollars. So hopefully people will start to see that this is an opportunity to get ahead of some of those negative health outcomes by promoting more connection and community. Francis.
Follow up, Francis. What's up? Are you still there? Francis, can you hear us? She looks like she might be. She said something about closed caption too.
So I want to speak to that, because the more that we use this technology, the more we learn what we need out of it. And as long as it's being designed for teenagers and video games, that's what we're going to get. And when they realize that there's another market, a bigger market, then people are just going to start making this a better experience for those of us who need those adaptations. And so I'm just encouraging more of us to use it, to learn what we need from it, and be sure that people are designing for our needs in mind rather than video games for kids.
Yeah, now I was thinking about something else as far as being able to connect this to a computer, which obviously there's got to be some computer interface somewhere about this, but would it be possible to have like a slideshow or a PowerPoint or something like that? I'm thinking about, when my parents were in their last days before they died, that it would have been nice if they could have, had a headset on and seen their pictures, or hear the voices of their kids when they were little, or to see something that you can just pull up on the screen of your computer. Now, it wouldn't be 3D, would, I guess would have to, is that something that you have thought about, or a way to get personalized on this kind of stuff?
I just love where you guys are already on this. Like, you're already coming up with better uses. You're already coming up with better ways for these coders and engineers to be working on these things. And that's what they need to hear, what we're asking for. They need to know what we would like to use these tools for. And that's how we're going to get it, is by being the voices asking for it. More and more cameras are going to be able to collect images in this kind of 360 surround, and those can be enjoyed in immersion in the headset. Of course, you can still enjoy 2D films, 2D pictures in a very immersed way on a headset. But in the future, more and more of what we're shooting in terms of video and photos will be accessible on headsets, which is, just something that we're waiting for. It's not something that we're seeing today. What we're seeing right now is these incredible simulations that people are creating, as well as these amazing 360 videos. The 360 videos being shot in the world, the simulations being rendered digitally on a computer. And what I found is that the digital environments aren't there yet in terms of offering a real sense of presence. But these 360 videos give us a real chance to get back to something or somewhere that we've been looking forward to seeing. And what I'm asking for from people is not as much as to connect to the waterfall that they're seeing, but to connect to the waterfall that they carry inside of themselves. That it's this whole world that's just kind of dormant inside of us because we haven't been back to the seaside. And so we've forgotten some of that. And so when we're seeing it again, when we're lying there in bed and we see the waves and hear the waves, it's not those waves that people are connecting to as much as all of the waves that they remember in their life. It's a reminiscence. It's an awakening of memory and connections that we were already harboring. It was just that they were dormant until there was an experience that brought them and lit them back up again. And suddenly people are talking about these experiences in their life again because something reminded them of a memory that had been asleep for years or more.
Now, Sheila, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand raised.
I did. Stephen, this is incredible stuff. This is really exciting. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I went to the Van Gogh exhibit, and that's what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah.
The fourth part of the exhibit, where you sit there in a chair and have this on you, and you see, and you're there. You're there. Is that what you're talking about?
It is, yes.
Oh my gosh.
And
that was so amazing. I know friends of mine who could not do that though, because they actually, I have a daughter who couldn't do it because she gets vertigo. So she would not be able to do that. And I can see how that could probably happen. But anyway, no matter what, it would, I now have a firm idea of what you're talking about. Thank you.
And that experience is a remarkable one of feeling as if you were diving through Van Gogh's art. And rather than just looking at it up on the wall as a 2D scene, you're walking through his villages. You're walking through the village of A Starry Night and looking up and seeing his painting as if you were alive in it. Absolutely. These travel videos that create far less vertigo is because of the way that the frames are rendered, the rate. It feels more natural to be walking the streets of Paris than swimming through a Van Gogh brushwork. So some of these experiences do create more vertigo than others. And so that's why it's just really important to know who you are and what we have and finding those right fits. But I'm so
Okay,
glad that you
Fran,
got to experience that.
let's hear your Francis
Well,
question. Francis, you have
I'm
a
a
question again.
technology junkie. Uh,
Love that.
I haven't been this excited about technology since 3D printing. Um, and what it's changing our, how it's changing our world. And Sheila, I'm so glad you brought up the Van Gogh exhibit because I went with family and we were just blown away. It's an extraordinary experience. But going to something you mentioned earlier about medical, a doctor talked about the medical applications. And then you were talking about restoring or regathering memories. And I couldn't help but think maybe that has an application in Alzheimer's. Because it would be so much, I mean, anytime you involve all the senses and, you know, get that 3D experience, I can't help but think, especially in the early stages of Alzheimer's, that it might be a very effective tool, not a cure, but a tool to make it easier to deal with.
It's amazing what all of us have forgotten. Not only those of us with memory impairments or conditions, even as in our wellness states, we forget things, and these are opportunities just to suddenly be flooded with feelings. That's what presence offers us. It people tell me again and again that, you know, this is closer than I ever thought I would get. And suddenly they are just filled with a compulsion to tell story. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, standing in a picture is worth stories. And that's what I try to do for people, is to give them a new view, to put them in a small little getaway from wherever they're feeling a little held up or trapped, and being able to suddenly transport them to an environment that matches the way they want to feel. If they want to be in a rainforest, if they want to be in an autumn forest, if they want to be with a rhinoceros, if they would like to hear Mozart on a piano. You know, these are all experiences that people are recording and creating and sharing. And there's only going to be more and more content as more and more people appreciate the value of creating these experiences and sharing them for the vicarious benefit of those of us who aren't there to see it in person.
I
I've
Now,
got
I want to be there for a rhinoceros.
thank you, Sheila. I would too. Hey, but I guess if there's a potentially a sad moment here, is that you're not here, Stephen. Where are you? And see, this is new, and so I'm sure you're reaching out to try to figure out to how to make this more universally acceptable. The senior center is a perfect place that if you know, you could get contributions, you could get people to pay for a monthly subscription or to literally buy equipment that the seniors could use. That's great. So let's be on, where are you, and where are you in your process?
Yeah, and I'm here in Santa Barbara, and I'm really grateful to be in Santa Barbara, and I have no intentions of trying to do it anywhere other than Santa Barbara. My hope is that there will be many other people who are doing the same thing until we're all able to do it for each other, where we can, you know, we wouldn't need a guide to come in and make it effortless because it's become that accessible. Where I see a solution for Bainbridge would be working with a company like Mind Immersive, who sends out these amazing goggles, who have made it as easy as possible for a family member or a caregiver to be the one that's offering the assistance. They've been working so hard to make it possible so that you wouldn't need some professional, but that we can just show up for each other. Some of their research that I am so enamored by is how much it improves the relationships in the caregivers with other people. If you've been, working with somebody, helping them get across the room, if you're helping them get their clothes changed or assisting with bath care, and then being able to go on a trip to Norway together to see the Northern Lights, to be able to do something together after having done all of that hard work of care, it's a real treat to then sit back and go on a safari and see the giraffes, to see the elephants, to do something together, where so often in a caregiving relationship, there's an unfortunate power dynamic of, I walked in and I'm going to walk out again. And I can move my body more easily. And so it's so nice to be able to find a shared activity that everybody involved feels like they're participating at the same level. And we're all excited when we see those elephants. We're all excited when we go over the top of the waterfall. And it's that doing something together that is so important for cultivating that sense of connection, relationship, and community that you're already doing every day in hundreds of other ways. I would never suggest that people do this instead of that. As long as you can be in community, then that's the medicine. When we can't actively join in those connections of community, that's when the community can show up for us, and using these pro-connective tools.
We do have a question here from the Clemens there. Jake, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. My question is, what are the costs of this beyond the goggles exactly? If I want to go for a tour of the Louvre or go to Egypt, is there a place to select where I want to go? And what would be the cost of those?
Thank you. That's a great question. So a lot of the content I license from people who are creating it, the videographers, and that is more expensive than it needs to be right now. And so as a user, what I'm suggesting for people, a lot of these videos are uploaded onto YouTube. And just like how we could go to YouTube to watch a video, or help me fix this video, or how do I get this stain out of my shirt video, all the different reasons that I go to YouTube, there's also incredible 360 content that's on there as well. People who are creating this and wanting to share it. If you wanted an even better resolution, then we contact them, we tell them how we're using their films, what they mean to us. And the majority of these content creators, when they find out that you're using their content for well-being, they will send you all of their files. They will be so happy to know that the video that they took of the sunset on their beach reached you, that they will be happy to share. There is a community here. That's something that I was so drawn into in VR, was that there was such a community of enthusiasm that, let me help you love this even more. And so I think as content, it grows, the cost of it is going to go down, but it's true. Right now, I broker most of my content. I have hundreds of experiences. Most of them I've paid for. Many of them are free. For a user, what we're often seeing is what I've mentioned, Mind Immersive, a couple times now. Their program that is about $100 a month, they will send a kit that has about 120 experiences preloaded. And to Jim's point about the internet, luckily it's free of that. So it's a Bluetooth technology. And so you don't have to worry about things like Wi-Fi. You can go anywhere with this and wear it when you're waiting for the doctors, or I have a client who I visit when they change his dressings on his feet. So it's an amazing tool for distraction when you have to go through something a little less pleasant. Just because they need access to one part of you doesn't mean that we have to give up all of ourselves. So I've been looking to make more of a relationship at the blood banks or at the dialysis center or at chemo. Anytime where we're expected to sit and endure, we could also be in Bali. Please.
Now, you earlier you told us about your incredible background in hospice care and a doctorate and dealing with death and the ends of life issues. Why don't you give us a sense about? I'm getting this feeling that you feel that you're kind of a Johnny Appleseed and you want to send out these concepts to other people to grow, rather than, unless you are going to franchise what you have or whatever. But you'll be a resource for people to do. It sounds to me, if I could be a little blunt about it, it's kind of like a personal mission for you to expand the knowledge that you already have and to help people even better than you have in your past. Is that true?
I really appreciate that. I do. I feel like I saw a bit of the future working in hospice for 10 years, knowing how long a day can get when we can't get out and nobody's coming in, and sitting with people, spending a lot of time, very analog style, flipping through a National Geographic. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Until somebody says, look at that. And it's a horse. And now we have a connection. We're talking about horses. And so when I saw this tool, the medicine was just so apparent. The first time I was sitting there and the snow was falling and the northern lights were up, I felt the medicine. I knew that this was an answer to a lot of the loneliness and disconnection that I was seeing in my community. And if taken to a degree, we know that isolation and loneliness spirals into depression, anxiety, and all sorts of measures that we're addressing with all of these other medical interventions. And so I saw an opportunity where the community could be the medicine, and I'm just leaning into it. My wife and my friends thinks it's hysterical that I have a tech business because they know that I hardly know how to check my email. I'm not a tech guy. This is a companioning service at its core. It's about a visit. It's about having a reason to get together. It's a side door into people's lives. It's an excuse. And then suddenly we're offering the medicine because now we're hanging out. I have a gentleman who we go and we look at World War II submarines together. And after I leave, his son, who lives in San Diego, can call him and say, hey, Dad, tell me about those submarines today. Rather than just hearing about the same narrative, the same symptoms, the same doctor stories, because those are the connections that his dad has. Mm-hmm. And so we're just needing new connections so that there can be new experiences, so that there's that sense of possibility again, that word that we started on. It's just so important at every stage of life. And this is a technology that just offers a sense of possibility for people who might have felt like their world was getting smaller, faster than they were comfortable.
All right, we got another question from Jake and Ed, the Clemens. So go ahead with your question.
Just quickly, this all sounds so amazing. From your experience, is there anything that people need to be wary of? Is there any kind of downside that you're seeing in the technology or the purveyors or the creators, or is it all great?
I think it's up to us to find the good, to find the integrity, to find the ethic. This is a tool like so many other tools that can be used to build worlds, and it can be used to break worlds down. I wish I could say that everything is healing, and that everything was good. I think that there will be more and more of it as people learn that this isn't just about video games
Mhm.
and a new way of blowing things up, but actually a whole new way of putting things back together for people. One of the things that I love about this technology is that we're able to use gaze control. So rather than using remote controls like I'm used to doing, or hand controls that a lot of the headsets still utilize, more and more it's just moving to gaze control. And so for a lot of my users, there's a window, and if you want to go to Bryce Canyon, you look out that window that says Bryce, and you see a picture of Bryce Canyon, you look at it and you go right through it, and then you're in a 5-minute experience of Bryce Canyon National Park. Or if you want to go swim with a dolphin, or see Everest or the Eiffel Tower, you just look right where you want to be and you can zip right through. And so that kind of gaze control is really making this a much more accessible technology than phones with buttons or video games with controls. So I'm just really excited about how adaptable they're making this as well.
How
It
can-
takes a lot to get me excited about technology. I don't get excited about technology. I get excited about people. I get excited about community. And then I stumbled on this and saw a fit. And we're not there, but we're getting there. And the more people are using it and forcing that change, seeing you two there makes me so happy. It makes me think of a couple that I get to visit who live right down the street, and we call them VR brunches. And I go over there and I bring 2 headsets, and wherever they go together. And Jim had asked, like, but you don't see each other, right? And you don't. If I turn to the right and we're standing at the Seine River in Paris, I don't turn and see you there. But I know you're there because you're telling me to look to my left, and I look to my left and we both see it.
Fun.
And in that way, we're traveling together again.
Wow.
And what's really
Hey,
funny is watching two people in a couple look at very different things in a scene.
Mhm.
And they're like, that's just the way we would travel. I would be looking at the sunset, and Stephen would be looking down to see what the person in front of him was eating. So there's that freedom within a scene to look at what you want to look at. Where in a movie, the director is always telling you where to look. In this experience, if I want to look closely down at what's happening at my feet, or if I want to lose myself in what's happening up here, I have the freedom to turn my head and invite a new experience. And that little bit is such a shift in the empowerment.
Mhm.
I use this swivel chair, and it's as exciting as it gets
Mhm.
to
Hey,
be able to
Sheila,
turn around.
question. So go ahead, Sheila. Did you have a question?
Stephen, how do I get this? How do I get my hands on this? Where, so I can sit here in my swivel chair and be happy?
Yeah, luckily you are in part of this amazing senior center. And so all I'm trying to do is approximate what you all get to do for each other every day. What I would love to connect you to a group like Mind Immersive and have them send you a kit so that you can show them how you're using it and telling them, this is what I love about it. This is what I need from it. This is what I would like more of. These are groups that would see that as an incredible opportunity for them to get feedback on their product. So, I would love to help you get in front of some of these big companies so that they are just sending you gear so that, for your experience, for your feedback, because we are on the frontier of this, and we're the generation that's going to shape this. We're the generation that's going to take this new technology and say, this is what we want out of it. And so the more that they can get it into your hands so that you can try it and say, this works, this doesn't, it's a good business move on their part. So let me introduce you to them and see if we can't get your community center on board with their products.
That would
Yes.
be
Yeah, and
so
I think-
wonderful. Can you do that?
I'm gonna call them today. Are you kidding? No, I'm gonna be like,
And
well,
you do it through Reed, work it through Reed.
you got it. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? No, I'm gonna tell them this is the conversation I had today. There's a community who's interested and engaged and
Oh,
is
yeah.
gonna give us, give you all incredible feedback on, this product.
So go ahead, and Jake, and then we'll give Stephen a chance to do his last thing with the last few minutes.
So very quickly, Stephen, I think this is a brilliant use when you look at end of life issues, because my first thought was, oh, how sad, people don't actually do things now. It's just all about the screen and blah, blah, blah. Because right now we're still able to travel, not like we used to, but there's going to be a time when we can't. And I just do want to go back to Paris one more time. And this would give us a chance to do that and walk those streets. I mean, I already do that on, Google Maps, and I know how to get to my favorite macaron shop. But it's different when you're doing this kind of experience. So it's pretty exciting. One question is, as a tool for caregivers, particularly end-of-life caregivers, what are you doing with networking, or what are you learning? Have you had conversations with anybody? How do you share this enthusiasm? Because you're one person and it could be an incredible tool going forward.
I thank you. Personally, I relate most to bath care nurses. It's my training. It's my place at the bedside. I know how skilled these men and women are, but they don't always have a chance to connect with the person. A lot of times they don't even know the person, because it's hard to know the person because they've advanced through their illness. And so having these opportunities to literally get to know somebody is such a gift for us as a bath care nurse. So to be able to equip somebody who's already in the house, who's already there, who's already trusted, to also have this incredible tool for travel, for engagement, for connection. A lot of people, their bath care nurse is one of their few people. And so to be able to journey together, to be able to take trips together, to be able to create these experiences together does so much for that relationship. Just to wrap things up there, that image of Jim and Reed walking home from the choir practice last night, like, that's the medicine that I want for people. I really relate to this idea of us all just walking each other home, and that walk continues after choir practice wraps. That walk continues when we can no longer walk. And this is just a pro connection tool for people to continue walking their people home. It doesn't have to stop with limited mobility. It doesn't have to stop because we're living homebound. This technology transcends so many of the limits that we've associated with aging. And so I see this as reimagining the possibility of what aging can be. And when we do that, we change the whole life. When we focus on how it can be different at the end, then the whole walk there is going to feel different. And for me, this just puts something up on the shelf that didn't exist. And now it's there. And I think it's going to be a renaissance for us. I think people are going to learn this tool and this technology and find ways to share the lived experience with one another in a way that I think about the first time 100 years ago when somebody was sitting there and the day had ended and it was dark and a neighbor brought over a radio and they turned the radio on. I really feel like this technology is going to bring the world back to people so that people don't have to feel like the world left them before they were ready to leave the world.